32 seconds. That is the entire flight of Air India 171 after it lifts off a runway in western India, climbs to barely 600 feet, and then descends inexplicably into a densely populated residential area and bursts into flames. One person miraculously walks away. 260 others do not. The investigation has been running for nearly a year. Now investigators say they are weeks from a conclusion, and what they found inside the cockpit voice recorder has set off a dispute that reaches from New Delhi to Washington. On the 12th of June 2025, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner crashed on takeoff from Ahmedabad, killing all but one of the 242 people on board and 19 more on the ground. India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau released a preliminary report a month later. Now the Civil Aviation Minister has confirmed the final report is expected within weeks. What it found is unsettling. What it has left open is more unsettling still. The aircraft was a Boeing 787 Dreamliner that Air India had operated since 2014. Its General Electric engines were both freshly installed within 3 months of the accident. The 787 had never suffered a fatal hull loss since entering service in 2011. The flight was scheduled from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick, 230 passengers and 12 crew, a highly experienced captain as pilot monitoring, a younger first officer flying. "Why did you cut off?" "I didn't." That exchange is the only line from the cockpit voice recorder that investigators have made public. The speakers have not been officially attributed. The full transcript remains sealed. Here is what was happening in the flight deck at the moment those words were spoken. Just before 20 to 2 in the afternoon, local time, the aircraft begins its takeoff roll on runway 23. 3 seconds later, it lifts off. 1 second after that, the fuel control switch for engine 1 moves from run to cutoff. 1 second after that, the switch for engine 2 does the same. Both engines, starved of fuel, begin to spool down. The ram air turbine, an emergency power generator that deploys only when main power fails, extends from the fuselage. The crew is now managing a total power emergency at 200 feet. 9 seconds after the switch is moved, engine 1 is returned to run. 4 seconds later, engine 2 follows. Engine 1 begins to recover. Engine 2 does not stabilize despite repeated relight attempts. A mayday is called. The aircraft, never climbing beyond 625 feet, strikes a medical college hostel block 1.7 kilometers from the runway end. Total elapsed flight time, 32 seconds. One passenger seated next to an overwing exit survives. He is discharged from hospital 5 days later. The preliminary report confirmed all of this. It found no mechanical defect, no fuel contamination, no configuration error. What it didn't do was say who moved those switches, or why. Fuel control switches on a 787 are guarded. They sit on the center pedestal behind physical detents designed to prevent inadvertent movement. Moving them to cutoff in flight is a deliberate two-step action. The procedure exists for one reason: engine fire or uncontained failure. There is no checklist that calls for cutting both engines at rotation. None. A dual engine failure at 200 feet is not a scenario with a survivable procedure. It is the scenario every procedure is designed to prevent. There are over 1,100 Boeing 787s flying today. The Dreamliner is one of the most advanced airliners ever built. And nearly a year on from Ahmedabad, the world still does not know why the engines on one of them shut down at 200 feet. A friend of mine flies the 787 for a living. He told me recently that he does not know, every time he pushes the thrust levers forward, whether the engines are going to stay running. That is not a man who reads conspiracy forums. That is a line pilot in the global fleet, sitting with the same gap in knowledge that the investigators are. 2 explanations are still on the table. Intentional pilot action, attributed in anonymous briefings to the American side, but not in any official document. Or an electrical anomaly in the battery system, formally submitted by the Federation of Indian Pilots and not yet answered by the Bureau. One of those answers is uncomfortable. The other is terrifying. The final report has to pick one, or admit it cannot. The final report is expected within weeks. There is no official cause determination yet, and the full cockpit voice recording remains sealed. When the report is published, we will cover it. Our thoughts are with the families who have waited nearly a year for answers.